Welcome in on a Thursday morning. It is the Chris Duel Show. My name is Shannon Salty Sweeney. Chris Duel, day one of his NBA All-Star weekend vacation. He works so hard for the Spurs and to bring you those updates throughout the Spurs season. So he gets some time off, just like some of those players do during the All-Star weekend. So joining us today and for the next few days is one Mr. Coach Paul A. Alexander. Now, I see we're on our video stream, as always. You can check that out on Twitter, YouTube, as well as Facebook. But, Coach, your name is listed today as I Miss Football. It is the Thursday after the Super Bowl. There's still plenty of stories going around, but how are you doing today, the Thursday after Super Bowl weekend?
I'm going through a rough time. I want to thank Jeremy. He came in here and kind of patted my hand and told me that it was all going to be okay, which I very much appreciate. I am making the transition to basketball, which I do every year at this time, but I never do it every year earlier than this time. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. We still have so many storylines to talk about, not just residue from the season and the Super Bowl, but there's the gift that keeps on giving. Your Dallas Cowboys.
It's not the gift any of us wanted or any of us asked for. That's for sure. Before we dive into that headline, let's check in with our soundscape stylist for today, Jeremy. What's going on, Jeremy?
Oh, just another day. I'm glad to be here with y'all this morning, Shannon and Coach A. I wish this Cowboys story wasn't a part of the morning, but other than that, I'm doing very well. How are y'all doing this morning, Shannon, Coach A?
Not quite as well as Matthew Stafford
No,
was doing yesterday.
no, we will.
Matthew was having a good time.
We will certainly get into Matthew Stafford and the Rams parade today. But for those that aren't aware, the Dallas Cowboys, a PR nightmare. I mean, we know that we're going to get stories throughout the offseason, but they wasted no time to make the headlines and push anything that was Super Bowl related down into the depths, because right now the Dallas Cowboys dealing with it of a firestorm. ESPN releases an in-depth article yesterday entitled "Cowboys Paid $2.4 Million to Settle Cheerleaders' Voyeurism Allegations Against Senior Team Executive." That senior team executive, Dalrymple? Do I have that right, Coach A?
Rich Dalrymple, that's right.
He
had worked for the Cowboys for 32 years.
There for 32 years. He recently retired. Most of that news was coming from news outlets. We didn't really see anything from the Dallas Cowboys organization. It felt a little odd because he was there for so long, but also, okay, maybe he just didn't want any fanfare and a giant farewell. Weeks later, here we are. This story is released from happenings in 2014 involving those cheerleaders, as well as some other incidents in 2015. Sir, I don't know that this was ever meant to come out, but it has now. And even though we are 6-7 years removed, it's still just as shocking. It's still just as heartbreaking. And to know where Richard was in the Dallas Cowboys organization, and in particular, his relationship with Jerry Jones, I think is just that more damaging.
It is for sure. And obviously, I want to say that we don't know all of the facts, but the facts that we do know that have been established are really concerning and really damning. And you said, well, we don't know if this was ever supposed to come out. Well, the one thing we know for sure is that it was not ever supposed to come out, and there was no other point. Every other consideration was subordinate to making sure this didn't get out. And we talk about the chronology of Rich Dalrymple leaving the Cowboy organization after 3 decades plus. Okay, this happened 6 years ago. He resigned on February 2nd. I mean, this year. I mean, Groundhog's Day 2022. In his retirement statement, he did the perfunctory thanking the Cowboys thing. And here was the Cowboys' response. Nothing. Crickets. They did not mention his name. They did not mention his departure on the website. This was never supposed to get out, and it did. And this is what precipitated his exit. As soon as Jerry Jones found out, and it's inevitable, in the scope of a story and an investigation the size of which ESPN turned in, and it was very thorough. Once Jerry Jones found out that this was going to get out, Dalrymple was out the door about 5 seconds later. Now, I want to stress that he adamantly denies that this had anything to do with voyeurism. He adamantly denies that he used a cell phone to record cheerleaders in the cheerleaders' dressing room. And later there's a report that he, and this is really gross, this is really disturbing, that he tried to use a cell phone to take pictures and video up the skirt of Charlotte Jones. Yeah, Jones. You're probably familiar with the surname. That would be Jerry's daughter. He denies that too. There are a lot of people, though, that stand by that. Now, again, we don't know the extent of the wrongdoing, but we do know this. This is established. He used his security card entrance key to get into the cheerleaders' locker room. Okay, right there, you're gone. Right there, you're gone. If any of this is on the up and up. But here's what happened. Jerry Jones and others in the Cowboy organization were just so obsessed with the idea that you can't let this get out that they realized that they couldn't tick anybody off. And that means including Rich Dalrymple. So they even had to kiss up to the perp here, because if he had filed a wrongful termination suit, all of this would have gotten out. This is really tawdry. I did not say Audrey. I said tawdry. It's bad, and it's going to get way, way, way worse.
You know, you mentioned the cheerleading incident where he snuck into the cheerleaders' locker room. You know, part of his denial said, I didn't know that they were changing. Well, it's a cheerleaders' locker room. What do you think they're doing in there? You know, I don't know what you expect running through their routines. I don't think so. I think they have other areas of which they do that. And part of this, you know, you mentioned Cowboys did not want this to get out. Each of those 4 cheerleaders that were involved in this were paid $399,000 a piece to never mention it, to never speak of it ever again. And to me, anytime you put money on something like this, to pay someone to be quiet, to me, that is damning evidence. That is admitting guilt. That is saying, yes, this happened, and to make sure that no one talks about it. Here, go take this hush money and go hush. Of course, this was done, 2014 with the cheerleading incident. You know, that's been quite some time. Clearly they were hushed long enough. The article even mentioned, you know, they did reach out because they did know the names of the cheerleaders. They did not release them, but that they were not willing to discuss the matters any further. And then you mentioned the Charlotte Jones incident. The 2015 draft, there was a live stream going on, and a lifelong Cowboys fan actually caught Rich doing what he was apparently doing, was using his cell phone to take photos and videos of the skirt of Charlotte Jones. And reading this yesterday, I can't believe that happened in 2015 and he still lasted as long as he did. Jerry Jones, that is your daughter. Whether you fully believe this guy or not, that he says he didn't do it, that you protect your own, and apparently your own in this case was Richard and not your daughter. You know, I mean, we've heard rumblings before about.
It wasn't even Richard, because he would have sacrificed Dalrymple if there was a way to do that. But
Yeah.
It does tell you what his priorities are. Okay, it was more important to keep this secret than to address the needs of his daughter, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and given that these incidences took place, 6-7 years ago, and who knows what may or may not have taken place in recent time periods, that ultimately led to Dalrymple stepping aside. It's super damaging. I don't know what the Cowboys are supposed to do going forward. Clearly, they need to say something right now, but what they do to go forward and what they do to show that their organization is not filled with people like this, who, again, one of Jerry's confidants, he was considered an extended member of the Jones family, which is another reason why Jerry probably felt the need to keep it so close to the chest. I just don't know what the Cowboys, where they go from here. This is not the off-season story that I was hoping for or expecting from the organization that I am a fan of.
Well, again, right now, what this goes back to for me is what was their not just top priority, what was their sole objective? And it was to keep this quiet to infinity. And had ESPN not launched this investigation and not written this story, Rich Dalrymple would be going into his 33rd year of employment with the Dallas Cowboys. This had nothing to do with anything other than damage control. And there are all kinds of tentacles coming out from this. All right, there's going to be some parallels drawn between this and the putrid organization that is the Washington Commanders, or whatever they are this week. And we're going to go through some questions here about who knew what and when did they know it. And for example, did the Jolly Roger know anything about this until he got wind of the ESPN investigation and story? I don't know. Now, there are some similarities here. There are also some differences here. Don't misunderstand. I am not saying that there's a chance that the Jones family is going to have to divest itself of the Dallas Cowboys. But here's the thing. They've already busted, they meaning the league, they've already busted Dan Snyder. Okay, he is the titular owner, but he is out of all day-to-day activity, and his wife, Mrs. Snyder, is running that franchise. Okay, depending on the results of these new allegations, if that happens, I will guarantee you the Snyder family will have to divest itself of that team and somebody else will own it. And we've got a parallel situation going on in Miami. The more you look at this, there may actually be some evidence that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross actually offered Brian Flores $100,000 for every game he lost. Okay, if that happens, I'll guarantee you he is absolutely gone. Now, where does Jerry Jones fit into this? You know, with Dan Snyder, you've got this pattern of behavior that stretches over a couple of decades or more. You know, the Cowboys will try to spin this as an isolated incident, and it may be, but let's not in any way kid ourselves. This is going to fission completely out of control, and this is going to dominate the Cowboys' off-season news at a time when that is the very last thing they need.
It's not a great look. It's not a great start to the offseason for the Dallas Cowboys in a time when we should be talking about player contracts and the upcoming draft, the upcoming combine. This story has taken over very quickly. I think it's just kind of getting started. And, you know, Paul, yesterday, Chris and I, we were asking where Jerry was. We haven't really heard from him. You know, right after their season ended, Jerry was, you know, very confident in saying that he was disappointed and embarrassed by the Dallas Cowboys season, that, you know, he's looking to make the right moves. He was adamant somewhat about the fact that Mike McCarthy would be the head coach going forward for now. He also made some comments about how Mike knows that he's not going to be the Cowboys coach for forever. So we thought maybe something would happen, and then Jerry kind of went quiet, and you start to wonder now with the release of this story if that was very much on purpose, as the story came out yesterday from ESPN about longtime Cowboys front office man Richard I'm going to have a hard time all day, Dalrymple. And Dalrymple and the Cowboys paying $2.4 million to settle cheerleaders' allegations against the senior team executive. We will discuss this more later today. We've also got some great stuff from the Rams parade yesterday. Frat U Stafford, or Matt Stafford, Frat King. I mean, the all the names were coming through. I thought Joe Burrow had a lot, but Matthew Stafford with his bottle of 1942 throughout that parade, that was a sight to behold. We've also got James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was in attendance at the Super Bowl, so we'll get all of his thoughts. If he's caught up on the commercials he missed, because I mean, let's be honest, that's the biggest issue with going to the Super Bowl. You don't get to see the commercials. We've also got Andy Everett. We do have some Tiger Woods news coming out yesterday, so we'll get some insight into that, as well as what's going on around the world of UTSA athletics. It's the Chris Duel Show, Ticket 760 and AM 1300 The Zone. We'll be right back with a high five play of the day.
Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Join in by dialing 1-800-707-9760.
The Chris Duel Show on a Thursday. Coach Paul Alexander joining Jeremy and myself, Shannon Salty Sweeney, on this Thursday morning, as well as tomorrow. And he'll be holding it down Monday. And how many days are you here next week, Coach?
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday. And Monday's going to be a little bit different because, it makes me feel very secure when either you or Chris are here, and especially secure when you're both here. And I love that. But you guys are both going to be out on Monday, which means we're going to have total anarchy. I am bringing in my friend and partner in Radically Rational, a guy that a lot of you know, a sports expert, a really wonderful communicator, a good guy, Anthony Pittman. So Pitt and I will be in here on Monday, and we hope that there is still a radio station to be salvaged on Tuesday after we get through with that.
I mean, you're teasing that show so well. I don't know why anyone wouldn't tune in. I will probably be tuning in. It's a holiday. I'm taking it. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to sleep in, but my body probably will wake me up at my usual Monday time. Anyway, it is 6:36 on the Chris Duel Show. So we're going to go ahead and get into today's High Five Play of the Day. All right, our High Five Play of the Day, of course, brought to us by High Five, 2 Austin area locations for all your entertainment and dining needs. They're great for corporate events, birthday parties, or just hanging out on any given night of the week. Thursdays, great specials, $5 frozen margaritas and half-price axe throwing. If you haven't gotten the chance to do that, I highly suggest it. It's the latest and greatest in adult entertainment. Have you ever thrown an axe, Coach A? I don't know. We've talked about this before.
I wouldn't trust myself.
You wouldn't trust yourself.
I would not only be a danger to others, I would be a danger to myself.
Okay.
Those of you that are of a certain vintage, remember Ed Ames? There's this famous television classic thing on the Johnny Carson show where Ed Ames, who had played Native Americans on television in various series, and they give him this hatchet, and he's throwing at the silhouette of a man. And the hatchet hits the man's silhouette in a place where even the silhouette didn't want to be hit. So I kind of took a cue from that. And it's like, of all the things I'm going to do, axe throwing, hatchet throwing, that's not happening.
The first time I went to High Five, they took care of myself and my family, and they gave us the instructions on the appropriate way and the safest way to partake in axe throwing. I stepped up, thought, you know what, I just want to hit the board, right? Like, just hit the board and hopefully it'll stick. That's objective number 1. I decided to go with the double-handed behind the back throw, right? Starting above and over your head and releasing. And my release point a little too high and the thing hit the ceiling. Luckily, they did not kick us out, as that was our first activity of the night. That could have been a quick one to wrap up, but I continued, and I learned that I'm just best going with the one-handed sidearm kind of method in order to get that axe to not hit the ceiling, but also get near the board. And every now and then one sticks, but it is quite a way to enjoy yourself. 2 Austin area locations, 1 out in Lakeway and 1 on Anderson Lane. Coach A, today's High Five, it's something we've been discussing, particularly with the Russian doping issue going on with the 15-year-old Camila, who tested positive back in December, has been competing throughout this Olympics, continues to compete, but because she is competing and they're dealing with this positive drug test, there has not been any medal ceremonies for skating. Russia placed first in the team event. Coming in second was Team USA, and because they have not given out these medals yet, there's a lot of unhappy people, and most of them are other athletes. We're hearing a lot from other athletes, whether they're other Olympians or former Olympians, and but Team USA, I think they're understanding of the circumstances. It's unfortunate, but I got to give our high five to them today because they are going through it, right? They've worked so hard to get to this moment. They place, they medal. They want to stand on the podium. They want to receive those medals. They haven't received them yet. They don't know when or if they will receive them in a fashion that is typical of the Olympics and the ceremony that comes with it. So yesterday was announced, Coach A, that for the time being, they would be awarded, quote unquote, Olympic torches. Torches used was part of the Olympic ceremony tradition that gets run all over the country. And of course, it comes in to light the official Olympic torch to kick off the games. I don't know that I want a piece of wood / a stick in place of my medal that I won and worked so hard for. What an awful party favor. So I got to give a high five to Team USA for dealing with this. And then I want to play you this clip, Coach A. This is from the other night after the ruling came down about Camila and her ability to continue skating in the women's program. This is former Olympians for Team USA, Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir. They are now commentators for, I'm sure anyone who's turned on the Olympics has seen or heard them so far this year. I think they're great together, but they really kept it real on their thoughts of the current situation. I want you to hear from them now.
Well, I strongly disagree with this decision. And, first I would like to say that Camila is only 15 years old. She is a minor, and I know firsthand what it's like just competing at an Olympic Games at 15 years old. I remember the overwhelming feelings and pressure that I felt. And for a young person, that's a lot to deal with. But with that being said, clean sport is the only thing that matters at an Olympic Games. And what we love about an Olympic Games is that we get to marvel at humans pushing athletic limits and doing the impossible, but with one caveat: to do it fairly and cleanly.
I have to condemn this decision with every ounce of my soul. The Olympics has to be clean or it's not fair. If you won't play fair, then you can't play. It doesn't matter how old you are or the timing on when the test results have come in. You have to be responsible for what happens to your body and to compete at the Olympics. This is a slap in the face to the Olympic Games, to our sport, and to every athlete that's ever competed at the Olympics. Clean.
Coach A, I think it'd be so easy to kind of throw a tantrum and come out guns blazing against the IOC, against the Olympics, against Russia and that team. And so I think the way that Team USA, top to bottom, from the broadcasters and former Olympians themselves, Tara and Johnny, to the team itself, and kind of taking it with grace. So I've got to give them a high five today. Your thoughts on this entire situation? I mean, you heard Johnny. He called it a slap in the face to not just these Olympic figure skaters, but to anyone who participates in the Olympics.
This is so absurd, and it's so sad, and it's so crazy that you almost can't believe this is happening unless you have tracked what's been going on in the Olympics for the last couple of decades, at least right now. It's always been political, but now it is hyper political. It's always been commercial, and now it's hyper commercial. The young lady's last name is Valieva. I did some basic research before I came in, and the derivation in Russian from Valieva is Valium, which is what we all have to take just to watch these games. It is so absurd. It's such an affront to the idea of sports. And guys, here's the thing, and I want to get your reaction too, Shannon and Jeremy also. I'm not angry. I'm not boycotting this. I'm not getting all high and mighty about this, but what they've done is they have played their way off my radar. I just don't care anymore. And that's sad in general. It's sad for my life because historically, I've gotten very, very emotionally attached to the Olympics. I've almost been kind of an Olympic amateur historian. And this is such a perversion of what this is supposed to be about. When you look at all the circumstances here, and nothing mattered here except the almighty dollar. I'm not saying that I'm shocked or that's new, but we have really gone to a new level of prostituting these games this time. And I find it to be a turnoff. And again, I'm not going to be, church lady here, and I'm not being more morally judgmental. I'm just saying that if you have distorted the Olympic ideal to that point, I'm not going to get mad, but I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I completely hear you. I mean, I do that with, news from time to time. I'm somewhat an adult, and 5 o'clock, I'll turn on a news channel. But, throughout COVID, it just got so hard to listen to that same drum beat day in and day out. And right now, anytime you turn on the Olympics, no matter what sport you're watching, this is hovering over it, and it's part of the conversation. And it's sad it is for those Olympians that did everything the right way. And you start to wonder now if the IOC almost thinks, well, any press is good press, any pub is good pub. This being a story isn't a problem. They may think that it's attracting more viewers, it's attracting more conversation, it's turning the wheels. But for folks like you and I, we're just tired of it. And it makes it hard to watch these games, especially the figure skating right now, and take it seriously and be okay with whatever the outcome might be, right? I mean, we already couch coach, we already couch participate. And what she missed, that triple lateral 360, how dare she? That was I could land that with my eyes closed, maybe in my dream. Like, that's part of the fun, at least for me, in the Olympics. But right now it's like, well, of course she landed that, she's on drugs. Anybody could. I completely agree with you, Coach A. Jeremy?
Yeah, and I just can't help but think it doesn't help for me when guys that I grew up watching in these events like Shaun White and those types of figures that I kind of molded the Olympics for me, when those time guys are retiring, and women, and just in the Summer Olympics too, that kind of doesn't help the situation for me. But I completely know what y'all are saying. I agree. And it I don't know at this point how Russia, or whatever they're called in the Olympics now, since they're not allowed to be a Russia officially, I don't understand how they're allowed to compete at this point. I mean, do they not have a long history of doping and cheating? I mean, hasn't this kind of been happening for
Of course.
decades and decades?
Of course. I go all the way back to the Cold War, and we were going through this in the 1964 Summer Games in Tokyo. And let me just take a stab at explaining this, and it's one more reason to be cynical. This is all about geopolitics. For the first time, Russia and China have been presenting a united front. One of the things we've always had going for us as Americans is that Russia and China didn't like each other any more than they liked us. And that was a good thing. So for the first time, there is this united front. And this is all about not ticking off the Russians. And it's one of the reasons why Putin is getting so bold, because everywhere he looks, people are careful not to tick him off. And it's why we're in the situation we're in to a great extent. But guys, I agree with you. This should be so open and shut. You tested positive, you're gone. And now we're going to have this sham competition, and you're talking about people getting Olympic torches. I got one of those at home. Okay, I am not an Olympic athlete.
That doesn't do it for you. You've traveled all the way over there. You're dealing with all of the COVID. I mean, that's one thing I find incredible about this story, is that it has almost completely taken everything COVID related out of the conversation, because this is just such a huge story that's touching all parts of the Olympics. You're telling me, after dealing with all of that, you're waiting to get a medal, and they're like, this one was carried by this person that you don't know who they are, but they mean something to another country. Please take it and take it home. Can you even travel with the torch on an airplane? I feel like you shouldn't. I feel like that should be considered some sort of weapon.
I will tell you this. I'll keep the story short. But do you remember the U.S. Olympic Festival here in San Antonio in 1993?
Well, I was born in that year, and Jeremy wasn't around yet.
Then you probably don't.
So,
in one of the crazier experiences of my life, I was the torch run director for the 1993 U.S. Olympic Festival. And this is no joke, folks. We spent 3 years planning this. 3 years. And, we would sell 1/10 of a mile legs to people all over Texas. And I don't know if you realize this, but Texas is a really big place. So it was the summer of 93, and we spent 43 days on the road running that torch around every Texas town or city that was larger than about 40,000. And it was the summertime, and it was arduous. And we, in addition to the public that's running the torch, you got the crew that's trying to take care of everything and make sure that nothing's on fire, for example. And in answer to your question, we lit the torch atop Pikes Peak before we brought it back to Texas to start the torch run. And we brought it back via an airplane. And yeah, that was a pretty dicey deal because on the one hand, there's the tradition that you're trying to keep the flame alive, and that's tough to do in those conditions because you're at such altitude. There's almost not enough oxygen. But getting that back there and then trying to make sure it was still burning in people's hotel rooms and things like that, it was a pretty strange thing. It was also we ran it into the Alamo Dome for the opening ceremonies, which was the first big event ever at the Alamo Dome. And matter of fact, it was the opening event. And you talk about roadkill. We've got we have got a crew there that is just out of it. I lost 17 pounds over the course of that torch run. And that was at a time, unlike now, when I didn't have 17 pounds to lose. But yeah, keeping that thing lit, that was kind of fun. There were all kinds of stories that went from there. Marriages happened as a result of that torch run. Divorces happened as a result of that torch run. Woo! Fun facts to know and tell.
Oh, man. I love having Coach A sit in with us. He's going to be with us not only tomorrow, but he'll be here Monday and next Tuesday as Chris is taking some time off for the NBA weekend, All-Star weekend going on this weekend. I'm sure we'll get into some of that later tomorrow. We'll talk about the Rams coming up next because they held their pep rally / parade yesterday. Lots of different takes and lots of different storylines coming out of that one parade. I don't know that we've ever gotten so many, as well as Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray, two quarterbacks who seem to be unhappy with their current situations, and quarterbacks that are now coming out with ideas of what a fix might be to make them happy, to make things better for them. And Coach, I don't know that you're going to be happy with what Kyler Murray has suggested to his organization. And of course, we'll continue talking more Dallas Cowboys as they go into the offseason with a story that you never want to have around your organization, but certainly not be the focus and the league. One quick thing, though, I saw this yesterday, and we'll hit this before we go to break. Zion Williamson. I know you're just now getting into the basketball season, Coach. But of course, we all remember how huge he was at Duke. Then there was the shoe scandal, right, where his shoe just broke in the middle of a game, and Nike is still hearing about it to this day. He ends up siding with Jordan when he goes to the NBA. He really hasn't played in nearly 2 years since his time in New Orleans, and so he hasn't been the guy that everyone thought he would be, right? The next generational player, the Trevor Lawrence of the NBA, if you will. And people are starting to compare him to Greg Oden. Do you like this comparison, and do you think that's where he's headed at this point?
Well, I hope that comparison proves to be invalid because I'm rooting for the young man, and he is a physical athletic freak. And some of these physical problems that we're seeing is just that he is so strong and he is so quick and he is so explosive that nobody's body can handle that. So, yeah, you don't want to be compared to Greg, and I mean no disrespect to him. So I'm hoping this all turns out well. But I will tell you that I've kind of seen this before in other sports. He has a body type in which this is going to be really difficult to stay healthy.
Yeah, and all that explosiveness and the amount of weight that this man has on his body, it's certainly not helping his recovery process or his ability to get on the court for the Pelicans. When we come back, Rams Victory Parade. We got some great audio for you and some great stories from what went down yesterday. You're listening to The Chris Duel Show, Ticket 760 and AM 1300 The Zone.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe. Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors, with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day.
And dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
Hi, Bobby.
Hey, Sarah. The usual.
This is the last time I'm coming here for coffee. I'm on a budget now.
1 second. Cold brew for Blake.
It's Jake from State Farm. Sarah, don't give up what you love. State Farm has policy options to get you a surprisingly great rate.
Good. I need my iced oat milk latte with caramel and cinnamon on top.
Girl, me too. For surprisingly great rates, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.
This is the Chris Duel Show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, yeah.
Hour number 2, 7 o'clock hour here on the Chris Duel Show on a Thursday with Coach A. Paul Alexander sitting in for one Mr. Chris Duel. Jeremy playing the hits, taking care of the soundscape stylist needs. We've been talking a lot of football this morning. The Dallas Cowboys story that came out yesterday involving a former senior executive and the ongoings with that situation. We've done our high five, given it to that Team USA figure skating team, because they've had to deal with a lot this Olympics. But as we move on here in the 7 o'clock hour, Coach, I want to talk about this Rams parade that took place yesterday. Of course, they're Super Bowl champions, which means you get a parade. When you win a championship, you get a parade. That's just how the world works. Unless you're the Lakers or the Dodgers, you still have LeBron James fighting for parades for something that happened years ago. But the Rams get their parade in LA. It was the first parade in quite a while. Apparently it was only a mile long, which doesn't sound like a parade to me. It sounds like how you may spend an afternoon in PE. We're going to go hit the mile. Just make sure that you finish it. You can walk it, you can run it, but just make sure you get from point A to point B, and you do that within the time that we have allotted for this class. So that was weird. There was also video prior to the parade, a little bit before the start time, of the streets where the parade would actually go by along that mile stretch leading up to the Coliseum. And there were not a lot of people out there. And I don't know if that was some handy camera work. I don't know if that was just way before the parade actually started, but it wasn't a great showing. And I can't say that I'm too surprised, right? Because that was one of the things with LA and them getting not one, but two football teams. They already have soccer teams. They already have basketball teams. They already have baseball teams. And oh, by the way, it's like the mecca of entertainment. So there's constantly something to do, whether you're visiting or from there. So I'm not too surprised that in the middle of the day on a Wednesday that this place didn't have the streets lined with gold and blue folks just screaming for the Rams. There's probably people who are a lot of bandwagoners, probably people that, for whatever reason have always loved the Rams, and people that are just like, yeah, whatever, this is a great way to spend my Wednesday, but not a lot of people showing up. Now, there were plenty of people at the end of the parade where they, of course, hosted their little, I don't even, pep rally. The stars of the team give speeches. It's interesting. I don't know. Have you ever been to one of these championship parades, Coach A, for anything?
Yeah, in a couple of different sports. I was in St. Louis when the Cardinals won the World Series back in 1982, and that was a big deal. And of course, I was working at a television station, and we did the whole parade live, and that was a trip. There have been some cowboy parades, et cetera, and of course, living here in San Antonio, you get kind of into the Spurs thing, so that's absolutely great. So are you trying to tell me there's a chance that the size of the crowd was over-reported yesterday? I mean, what was this, a presidential inauguration?
I don't know if there was over-reporting or, again, just some great camera work done by them, but you feel bad for the team a little bit, right? Because they've seen other people get parades. They've seen other teams get parades around the country, and the turnout, even for the boat parade that they held in Tampa, there were boats everywhere. There were people lining the docks and lining the bayways in order to see just a glimpse of that team. I mean, these parades, especially these championship parades, I love going to Disney World, and I love those parades. I love being like, oh my gosh, there's Goofy, there's Winnie the Pooh and the gang. We're dancing, we're singing, we're having a great time. I can see everybody. It's very clean. These seem a little chaotic to me, right? At first, they're not in uniform, so you have a hard time identifying who's who unless they are the Matthew Staffords or the Aaron Donalds or the Cooper Kupps. And then on top of that, they bring their friends and family. So they're also on these floats, and they're not really floats. They're like trucks with stages on top. So they're not it's not the most beautiful thing ever. And I get this is all kind of slapped together last minute. But calling it a parade is it's more like a drive-by, if you ask me, especially, again, only a mile long for this so-called parade route for the Rams. So I just don't know that I find them enjoyable as something that, if I was in a championship town, I'd be like, oh yeah, let's go to that today. Especially let me miss work. Let me take off so I can do this. Now, given that I'm working in sports and I cover sports, yes, I would go. But just as an activity, if someone said, hey, do you want to do this? I'd probably defer to quite literally anything else. But did you enjoy them? I mean, what was the vibe when you went? I'm sure for the Spurs parades, they had a fair amount of people, probably a couple people, I would assume, a couple more than the Rams anyway.
Yeah. I enjoyed all of those, and frankly, I enjoyed watching the Rams yesterday. And I'm not being cynical about this at all. It's really good that Los Angeles is becoming a football town. I think that's good for the league. As I mentioned, I spent some time in St. Louis, so I know that the Rams are kind of a sore subject there. But in terms of what's right with the world, I think the Rams being back in Los Angeles is a good thing. I felt horrible for the people of San Diego when the Chargers moved, but it's a good thing when the NFL has a big footprint in Los Angeles. And by the way, I'm not usually one for, sci-fi stadiums and stuff like that. And I said sci-fi on purpose, but that place, SoFi, is absolutely beautiful. And I enjoyed that. And it looked like everybody was having a good time yesterday. And I thought it was great that particularly those players got to decompress. You know, you and Chris and I were talking last week that, man, that Super Bowl in this season took a toll. I mean, even on the winners. I mean, you could tell everybody was just on the emotional ropes. And it was good to see them having a good time. And I thought Stafford was hilarious. Not only do I not hold that against him, I thought it was great. If you had done 12 years of hard time in Detroit, you would be entitled to that too. I thought that was fine. You know, we heard McVay, the youngest coach to ever win a Super Bowl, talk about stepping down. And I don't doubt his sincerity at the time. And we heard Aaron Donald at the age of 30, at the absolute peak of his game, talk about stepping away. Now, I don't think either one of them is going to do that, but I don't doubt their sincerity about what they said and when they said it. It was absolutely exhausting. And again, it looked to me like everybody was having a wonderful time. You know, that stadium is right there next to what used to be the fabulous Forum in Inglewood. And it's right there in the flight path as you fly into Los Angeles. And there's not just like a whole lot of room there. So I think probably logistically that parade was limited a little bit. But they found a way to have a good time. I think that team absolutely earned it. You know, I know we've got maybe a little lingering controversy in some quarters about who should have been the MVP. There's no question that Aaron Donald is the best player, but I thought they got the MVP selection correct. Stafford would have been a good choice, but Cooper Kupp was the right choice. What did you guys think?
For MVP?
Yeah.
I liked Cooper Kupp. To me, it was going to be Stafford until Cooper Kupp made that final touchdown reception for me, especially how clutch he was coming down the stretch. Now, you mentioned Aaron Donald and Sean McVay and them kind of alluding to maybe that they were going to be stepping away. But yesterday during the parade, they both said, hey, let's run it back. So a lot of people happy about that. Who knows if maybe some liquid libations were influence of them saying that. But that made Rams fans happy to hear. And then you mentioned Matthew Stafford, of course, being the quarterback and a guy who could have very easily won MVP for that Super Bowl. He took to the mic and, he was holding on to a bottle of 1942 tequila. The day before he was parading in Disneyland. It's been a lot for him since he won the Super Bowl. But let's listen to Mr. Texas's own Matthew Stafford from yesterday's victory parade for the LA Rams.
At the same time, I'm damn happy to be standing up here with you guys celebrating the Come on. Let's go, y'all. I'm going to bring us a little Southern hospitality to this. I appreciate y'all so much. You guys have been unbelievable. Unbelievable all year. And you know what? We appreciate you. Let's go.
I'm a little bit of Southern
Southern
hospitality up in this. Listen, I thought it was great. Well deserved. I almost feel bad that because he's a quarterback, right? Like he probably knew he had to speak. He probably, felt like, okay, I have to do this, but I'm maybe not in the best place right now. And then later in the program, after everything kind of ended, he was standing on the stage with his wife, Kelly, and there was a photographer taking photos, and I guess she got a little too close to the edge because she fell over. She fell backwards off of this platform, and that for whatever reason, there's a camera on this videoing it, and you see Matthew Stafford go, "Oh my gosh!" takes a sip of water, and then turns around and walks away while his wife goes over to check on her and make sure that she's okay. Matthew Stafford, I don't know if that's just a natural reaction, like, no, I'm not here for this, or if he was like, I am in no place right now, in no shape to be helpful in any way other than to say, oh my gosh, and alert other people that something is going on. But Matthew Stafford was having the time of his life yesterday.
Did you notice this too? He's like any other Texan. As the BAC climbs, the more the drawl gets into your voice. The more Texan you get. And I'll say this, I think he may have been incrementally more sober than Brady was last year. And they had different concerns. One was trying not to throw the Lombardi trophy into the water. And apparently Stafford had to worry about not throwing his wife into the water. So I feel him.
Well, and you mentioned Brady. He took in some video of this parade and saw Matthew, with his bottle of 1942, a couple beers, couple cigars. And he said, hey, man, mix in water, Matt. Trust me. Because if anything, the thing about Brady was really, I think, the video after getting off the boat and being helped to the car to get him home, right? The avocado tequila just got to him a little. Maybe he should have been drinking 1942 because it looks like Matthew Stafford can handle his liquor a little bit better. Yesterday, also, his wife, who wants you to remind you that his name is Matthew and not Matt, she was a little upset with all of the talk going on about her husband, right? Because he wins a Super Bowl. He was with Detroit. He suffered through that. He gets to LA. He wins a Super Bowl. And now the conversation, apparently, because of Richard Sherman, had turned to, is he Hall of Fame worthy? And the answer seems to be no from a lot of critics. And so that became a center of topic of conversation. And Kelly's point of that was, can we just celebrate what's happening right now? Why someone gets to the top and the first thing we ever do is criticize. Your thoughts on that, and then just a quick reaction, because we'll get James Allen later on this, but do you think he is Hall of Fame worthy after winning a Super Bowl now?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I completely agree with the question, why do we have to do this right now? And when I say we, I'm part of the media too. And I think it is a crime, and I think it is unfair, and I think it was improper to have that discussion at that point. I mean, my goodness, the guy just won a Super Bowl. His team won a Super Bowl. Let's just have some fun. Now, do I think that Matthew Stafford is potentially a Hall of Famer? Yes, I do. Do I think that if Matthew Stafford, for whatever reason, decided to shut it down tomorrow, do I think he's a Hall of Famer? I do not.
Jeremy, Hall of Famer?
Yeah, and it's funny y'all mention this because my sports group texts, like they're all asking this all immediately after the Super Bowl. So you're right, this is the topic of conversation around him, and rather than just celebrating him. But for me, I would lean yes. I mean, he has the numbers, and then now he has the ring, and I don't want to be like, oh, if you win the ring, you get in. But there's something to me about like actually going to win the ring. Like he won that ring. It wasn't like, Peyton Manning being carried by the Broncos, with all due respect. I mean, there's something to me about you being a major factor or the reason your team wins the ring. And it's just funny because the comparisons that got thrown in, at least in my group text by the fellow sports enthusiasts that I talked to, was Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo. That's who Stafford was being compared to. And I think obviously we can all agree that he's not in this stratosphere of Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, whoever you want to put there, Drew Brees, whatever. Insert quarterback
he
here.
May be. He may be. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that he does not have Hall of Fame talent. I mean, he can throw a football like few people in history. And that was, let's say it, that was such a great drive. They talk about the drive by the Denver Broncos to beat the Cleveland Browns back in the late 80s. And we had that Super Bowl drive where Joe Montana led the 49ers over the Bengals, when they played in Super Bowl 23. That drive that Stafford put together to win that Super Bowl was as good as anything I've ever seen. I don't want anybody thinking I'm anything other than a very enthusiastic Matthew Stafford fan. I think he has Hall of Fame talent. It's great that he's got the skin on the wall. All I'm saying is, on the road to Canton, you got a little more wood to chop.
7:20 on the Chris Duel Show. We'll talk more Stafford and the Rams on the other side, but we've got a key word for you now. It's your shot to get $1,000 in your hand.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Money. That's money. Enter it on our station website now.
Keyword money. Take that over to ticket760.com and am1300thezone.com for your chance to win. We'll have another keyword for you in the next hour. Talking Rams and Matthew Stafford. I think of Joe Flacco, but then I put Matthew above Joe because Joe clearly has, he was never the same after that Super Bowl. He's bounced around from teams from time to time, and given the attitude he's had of late of being like, no, I'm the guy. I'm not a guy who comes in and trains the next generation. I'm the guy who comes in and just plays ball. which is not the attitude he needs to be carrying around. I think if you were to ask me hard and fast, my answer would be no for Matthew Stafford in the Hall of Fame, much like Coach A right now. He still has plenty of game left in him to prove himself worthy. But also, I think it depends on what the class looks like, when he does decide to retire and who he's up against, because being a quarterback, I think, and a Super Bowl winning quarterback at that, I think already elevates you somewhat compared to other people who might be eligible for a Hall of Fame class, and therefore, he could get lucky in that sense, in my opinion. Yesterday as well, during the parade, Rams GM Les Snead, who received a lot of criticism for the moves he made in the offseason and during the season and all of the picks he gave away in order to create this team, this now Super Bowl championship team. And he kind of poked fun at himself. I'll let you hear from him and what he said yesterday during the parade.
So in honor of the shirt, them picks, we'll use them to go win more Super Bowls.
I mean, it's the ultimate, like I told you so, right, Coach A? I mean, and he was in fact wearing a shirt with his face on it with the quote, blank them picks. Something he said, early on, and here he is now with the Lombardi Trophy. Your thoughts on Mr. Les Snead, wearing the shirt and then screaming it to the fan base at the parade yesterday.
It ain't bragging if you can do it, is what they always say. Now, everything fell into place for him. All the cosmic tumblers fell into place. And for all of these other teams that have been, quote unquote, all in, it's never worked out. This is the first time it's ever worked out. So that philosophy now has one in a row going for it. On the other hand, it did work. And the fascinating thing to me, because football more than any other business is a follow the leader business. Having seen what we just saw with the Rams, is this going to be the blueprint for other teams going forward? And is that going to cause a seismic change in the way teams are built in the NFL? I don't know. All I'll tell you is that's the first time in all the times that it's been tried, that's the first time it's worked out.
Coach, I want to get into this story here. We've been talking a lot about Kyler Murray as he's made some moves on social media that a lot of people took notice of, clearing everything off of his Instagram except for 2 pictures, kind of disassociating himself with the Cardinals, taking them out of their bio, unfollowing them. Reports now are that he met with the Cardinals front office this week and demanded that they trade for his former college teammate, current Dallas Cowboy, CeeDee Lamb. And listen, the Arizona Cardinals obviously started off the season spectacular. They were the front runner. They were the favorite for the number 1 seed in the NFC and the favorite to even make it to the Super Bowl. They too had made a lot of trades previously to acquire guys that they felt like could get them to that finish line. You know what? I think Kyler Murray saw this run that the Bengals had and saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, former LSU teammates, and that connection that they shared. And even though Kyler Murray has that dude, I don't know his name, DeAndre Hopkins, already one of the best receivers in the NFL, he says, no, give me my former teammate, CeeDee Lamb. That will make me happy. Coach, do you think there's any way he gets CeeDee Lamb? And if he does, is the trade 1-for-1? Is it DeAndre Hopkins for CeeDee Lamb? And would you be okay with that as a Cowboys fan?
Not going to happen, first of all. And secondly, I'm assuming you guys don't bring me in here on a Thursday morning to be mealy-mouthed. So let me just cut to the chase. I am 100% out on Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray will never win a Super Bowl. It doesn't matter where he plays, and it doesn't matter who he plays with. He needs to keep his own house clean. You talk about the collapse of that team. Kyler Murray wasn't just bad down the stretch. He was embarrassing at every level. He's got other things to worry about. I can't always tell you who can play, but I can almost always tell you who can't play at that level. Kyler Murray will never win a Super Bowl.
So this season, at least the good parts for them, you consider that a flash in the pan then for Kyler Murray and that Arizona Cardinals team?
I'm not going to call it a flash in the pan, but I am going to call it a pattern. Okay, how many times now has he just completely come undone in the back end of the season? Okay, and you look at some of the decisions he made and his refusal to go back into a ball game, you're going to lose that team. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen.
What's amazing is that he continued to play just as poorly in the Pro Bowl. just 2 weeks ago. He continued to throw those interceptions. Kyler Murray, that's an interesting story. It makes you wonder if it seemed at first he made the right choice to say, no, I'm going to be an NFL player instead of a baseball player. Maybe now he's regretting that decision, or maybe soon he will regret that decision, depending on how things shake out with the Arizona Cardinals and his desire to acquire his former teammate, C.D. Lamb. It is the Chris Duel Show, Ticket 760 AM 1300 The Zone. When we come back, we've got sports history, sports birthdays, and of course, a salty shakedown. I've got some more Olympic drama for you, some more NFL news, and where Arch Manning might go. I'm gonna give you my take on why Arch should choose Texas, as it is one of his finalists in his schools that he's got left on his list. We'll come back after this short break. You're listening to the Chris Duel Show.
Audible makes it easy to do you. Take time out to lose yourself in a sci-fi epic, best-selling thriller, or celebrity memoir. Or dive into an exclusive you can't hear anywhere else. Whatever you're into, you can find the best of it on Audible with originals, audiobooks, and podcasts. There's wellness, true crime, motivation, and powerful new voices to discover. With so many included titles to enjoy, there's always something great to listen to with Audible. Sign up for your free 30-day trial today at audible.com.
Let's get back to the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Find Chris and Salty on Twitter at Chris Duel and at Shannon B. Sweeney.
Follow us. We love talking to our Twitter followers, and make sure you also hit up Ticket 760 and AM 1300 The Zone on Twitter as well. Always some great content that you can find on both of those pages. We were just talking the Rams parade as well as Kyler Murray and the recent goings-on with him and the Arizona Cardinals. So before we get into sports history, sports birthday, I want to continue the NFL conversation a little bit with Deshaun Watson, because it came out yesterday. He's already trying to make moves for next season. We're still kind of up in the air with what will happen with those cases and allegations against him. But we know one thing for sure. He does not want to be in Houston. He does not want to play for the Texans. And honestly, if I'm a Texans fan, I don't want him playing for me either. But he has named 2 teams, right, Coach A, that he feels like he would be a good fit in a place where he would enjoy playing, and thinks that he could help them win some games. Those 2 teams are the Minnesota Vikings and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Tampa, of course, still, holding on to a little bit of hope that maybe Tom Brady comes back. However, at this point, it seems like if Tom Brady were to make some sort of righteous return, it might be to a team like the 49ers, a place he grew up loving and that he always wanted to play for. Your thoughts on Deshaun Watson, the player, for putting the allegations and such aside for a second. Deshaun Watson, the football player, as is, being a part of either of these 2 teams.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm glad you prefaced that the way you did. Take the allegations out of this and kind of analyze it from a football standpoint. The Tampa Bay thing might make some sense to me. And again, like you said, they're still trying to talk TB12 back. But Bruce Arians getting toward the end right now, and they still have a lot of good players on that team. So I would not be surprised if there was some dialogue there. Now, the Vikings are really interesting. Of course, they hired their new coach yesterday, Kevin O'Connell, who is from that Sean McVay tree. I mean, they've been seen in the same lunchroom together. So clearly, and by the way, I'm being totally facetious. Kevin O'Connell's a really good coach. And the Vikings are interesting in this sense. I can't think of an NFL team that in my mind has underachieved more over the last few years than the Minnesota Vikings. That's a really good roster, and I love them, but it just looked to me like that team just stopped listening to him. And that happens to every coach at every level eventually. So that makes some sense as well, because it is a good roster. Now, evaluating Deshaun Watson as a quarterback, we don't know if he's going to lose anything off his fastball, if there's any rust here, if there's going to be any emotional baggage that gets in the way of his performance. But when he's right, that is a top 5 NFL quarterback. And the last year that he did start for the Texans, what he was able to do, surrounded by that team every single week, he kept them in the game. I'm not questioning his talent at all. I do think there's a lot of baggage there, and that'll apply to any team who brings him in. You're going to hear about that. But I will say that when I heard he mention Tampa Bay, my ears perked up a little bit, primarily because of the Bruce Arians element.
He certainly is an incredible talent, and one that, I think a lot of people would like to see play, depending on how things unfold with his off the field circumstances. Me personally, given where things sit right now, I wouldn't want him to be a part of my team. It'll be interesting to see if he does land somewhere else, how that fan base and organization takes him in. Do they accept him? Does it take some time? Does it take a couple wins to maybe he's not so bad? And what the Texans might get in return, because that is a team that is certainly in the rebuilding era. All right, it's now time here on the Chris Duel Show, 740, for some sports history from Coach A, Paul Alexander.
Loving this. On this day back in 1943, Yankee Joe DiMaggio enlists in the U.S. Army. Let's hear it for Joe DiMaggio. Let's hear it for the U.S. Army. Yeah. 1968. I'm a little bit surprised it's that relatively recent, but on this date in 68, the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame opened in Springfield, Massachusetts. Also in 1968, and I remember this, Frenchman Jean-Claude Killy completes a clean sweep of the alpine skiing events at the Grenoble Winter Olympics, where he wins the slalom, also takes out the downhill and the giant slalom. It was probably pretty good to be Jean-Claude Killy, would be my guess. And in 2019, the 61st Daytona 500, the Joe Gibbs racing team goes 1-2-3. Denny Hamlin holds off reigning Cup Series champion Joey Logano and teammate Kyle Busch to win his second Great American Race. Birthdays. Oh, man, we can all identify with this. In 1893, Wally Pipp, the American baseball player. We all know what it means to be Wally Pipp. Okay, you miss one day. You miss one day, and Lou Gehrig replaces you, and you never play baseball again. Don't want to be in that position. 1931, okay, happy birthday, I guess, Buddy Ryan. I guess he was born on this date in Frederick, Oklahoma, back in 1931. I'm not going to lie to you, not my favorite dude. 1936, Jim Brown, maybe arguably the most dominant player in NFL history for the relatively short time that he played. He was born on this date in 1936, and I didn't know this. If I'd known this, I'd have brought like a party hat or something. It's Michael Jordan's birthday. He was born on this day in 1963. All he's done is been a 5-time NBA MVP, a 6-time NBA champion. He was born on this date in Brooklyn, New York. Time now for the Salty Shakedown.
1963. How old does that make Michael Jordan? About 60? Or almost 60? 59?
That's about right, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I can't believe it. This man's still out here thinking he can beat LeBron.
It'd be 37 and 22.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
that's 59, right?
That kind of makes me feel old that he's getting up there. But happy birthday, MJ. I don't know what you get the man who already has everything. So maybe nothing. You get nothing. You just get happy birthday wishes and maybe a good time. Maybe someone will gift you your own beverages and cocktails that you already serve and sell for thousands of dollars. Anyway, yes, the shakedown, starting off with what is probably the hottest story in the NFL right now. And so I'm not sure how aware you are of this current situation. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, it's a huge offseason for him, but he just got a lot of free time on his hands because, sir, he has called off his engagement with actress Shailene Woodley. Of course, they were together all last offseason. They were kind of announced their engagement about a year ago when he won MVP last year, not this year, last year. He thanked his fiance. She was noticeably absent from his MVP speech this year. They did not appear on the red carpet together. According to sources, she was unhappy with just how much footballing he was doing, right? As if she didn't know, because when they first started dating, she said, "I never thought I would date someone who throws a ball for a living." Well, yes, that's what he does, and he's very good at it, and partly because he puts in the effort and the time. She obviously spent most of the season in LA because she is an actor, and he in Wisconsin because that is where he currently plays for the Green Bay Packers. Listen, Coach, I don't love it, but it does happen a lot of times when a great athlete who is at the top of their game gets attached to a female, be it a star or just an ordinary person. They often start to, if there's a slump, they blame it on the female. If there's anything wrong, they blame it on the female, right? And there was a lot going on with Aaron Rodgers, the not talking with the Packers. There was the Jeopardy bit where people, he's a little cheesy. He's okay at it, but it was kind of weird. There was the whole vaccine issue, right, if we recall, and that they both unvaccinated both into like kind of holistic methods of doing things. And then they had that trip to Hawaii, right, when he should have maybe been in Wisconsin figuring out what he was going to do for the next season. So people tied a lot of what he was doing and things that they did not like about Aaron Rodgers to her. So we'll see what happens going forward if he has a change of heart in any of these instances. But this is big news, sir, and I wanted to get your reaction on this engagement call off and this breakup for the ages.
Well, I mean, is there a pattern here? Because I understand the Danica Patrick thing didn't work out either.
He has often been attached. I think Olivia Munn for a while. I mean, he's had no problem getting himself a girlfriend. It's the keeping it part he has a hard time with.
Yeah, it's a shame he spends so much time throwing a football. That you were expecting what? So hey, here's the thing with me. I don't care whether it's a celebrity romance or just any of us. That is their business, and I do not interject myself into that at all. I except that I want everybody to be happy. So that's great.
I just figure Shailene Woodley, who clearly wasn't a sports enthusiast prior to meeting Aaron Rodgers, maybe thought the NFL plays on Sundays. What is he doing the rest of the time? He only works for 3 hours on Sunday. Why is he, where is he right now? I don't understand, right? Because they just gallivanted all offseason, and then comes the season, and wait a minute, football is more than just 1 day a week? What is this nonsense?
I got to tell you, and you guys will identify with this too, since you work in the same business. I can't tell you the number of times in my television career where I'd have a friend, a buddy, call me up and say, hey, let's play some golf this afternoon. I'm working. Well, I'll have you back at the station at 5 o'clock. What the hell do you think I'm doing all day?
Yeah, we do more than just the 3 hours of radio here. There's more that goes into it. I'd love it though if it was just if it was that easy. I really would. Moving on, we're going to keep it in the realm of football, specifically with Arch Manning. Obviously, a huge get for any school who can manage to get him to sign in the coming years. He's the number 1 overall prospect of 2023, and of course, he's kind of related to those Peytons and the Elis and the other Mannings of the worlds that have proven themselves worthy. And it is because of that I have an argument for why he should choose Texas. Because right now, even though earlier in the week there was a story that it was just Texas and Alabama on his list of schools to go to, that has since been corrected. Someone from his family saying, listen, he's also got Florida, LSU, Georgia, and Ole Miss on his radar. So I've got this for you here, Coach A. All those other schools are great. They're obviously SEC schools. They've all been proven. They've all got great history. Texas, however, has been struggling for the last, 15 plus years now, ever since that last national championship. They need something to hold on to. They have the furthest to climb, right? And the story of legends starts when you're from the bottom. And to get you to reach the top. Why go to Alabama? They go to the college football playoff every single year. That may be an argument to get some recruits to sign, to say, look what you can do year in and year out of your time here spent in Tuscaloosa. But if you're Arch Manning, you've got something to prove. You got Manning on the back of your jersey. People are already expecting the best of you. So if you go to the school that essentially is saying you are going to get here no matter what, and then you don't, what's that going to look like? But if you go to Texas, where things have not been on the up and up, they seem to be, we fall back 2 steps. They seem to be, we fall back 2 steps. You can become legend not only for the University of Texas, but for college football and make a name for yourself and be Arch Manning, not Peyton's nephew, not Eli's nephew, not just a member of the Manning family. You could build your legacy that would then project you into the NFL for even more greatness, right? Can you just picture it, Arch? You come to the University of Texas, you go and you win a Big 12 championship, check number 1. You get into the college football playoff, check number 2. Maybe you don't win the whole thing, but then you know what? Texas, they make the move to the SEC, right? You could have chosen to go to the SEC school to begin with, but you went to Texas, and now they're joining the SEC. And everyone wants to beat down on them. Why? Because they're Texas, and that's just what they do no matter what. But now that they're in the SEC, everyone is collectively on the same side. They all want Texas to lose. And then you, Arch Manning, bring Texas to the forefront of the SEC. You make them competitive in that division. You get them to the college football playoff. You maybe even win them a national champion. You get more glory than both Eli and Peyton at that point, in my mind, if you take this route. So to me, Arch Manning, Texas, not just as a fan do I want you to come, but I think for your legacy and for your future, it is the right choice for you to make. What say you to my argument, Coach A, Paul Alexander?
I am fired up. Let me just tell you something. If you ever get tired of this radio thing, and I hope you don't because you're wonderful at it, that was the best recruiting pitch I ever heard in my life that did not involve either a Trans Am or a homecoming queen. That was unbelievable. I think you just made the best case that I ever heard, and that is exactly the way I would pitch it to Arch. I really would. And keep in mind, it was really controversial when Peyton went to Tennessee. So there is some precedent there. I think your rationale behind that is just dead on. That's great.
And if he wants to make money, he'll make money whether Texas wins or loses. That's never going to be in question now with NIL going on. And Texas, if you need help with the pitching for Archer or any incoming recruit, just let me know. My afternoons are free. All right, moving on. We've touched on some Olympics today, but want to touch on this. We've got more controversy. Imagine that, the Olympics and controversy and not liking something that's going on. We've already had the ski jumpers and their suits being too loose, so they get DQ'd. after competing in the event, we've got what's going on with Russia figure skating and how that's affecting the rest of the Olympic world. Well, yesterday, a USA snowboarder by the name of Julia Marino announced that she would not be participating in the big air competition. She had already won silver in the slopestyle competition. These are both snowboarding events. And the reason is because the IOC had said, yeah, you know that snowboard that you used in that previous competition where you won a silver medal and we gave it to you? That's not allowed. It says Prada on the bottom of it, and that is not a sponsor of these Olympics. It's not a Coke. It's not a Pepsi. It's not an American Express. It's not McDonald's. It's not something that is already a part of a sponsorship with us. And since we're not making any money off of it, we don't want that to be seen when you're doing your flips and tricks in the air. So you need to cover that up to compete in the big air competition. And she took to her Instagram to explain the goings on, that she took a Sharpie to the board. She wasn't happy about it, but she took a Sharpie to the board. She, of course, is sponsored by Prada. She took a Sharpie to the board, tested it out. The board, right? That's all about the wax. It's all about the feel. And she said it did not feel great. She was going to attempt a trick and something just felt off. She did not want to hurt herself. So ultimately, she pulled herself from this competition. But once again, how is it okay in one competition and not okay in the next? Listen, she does walk away from the Olympics with a medal, but she could have earned another one, Coach A. I mean, what is going on? Why can't she just have Prada on the bottom of her board?
Welcome to the Olympics. Welcome to the International Olympic Committee, and to some degree, also the U.S. Olympic Committee. I will promise you that there is nothing more important in that entire business than protecting sponsors. You talk about stuff that they get just really, really uptight about. Those sponsors pay a lot of money, and it's for Olympic affiliation and exclusivity. And if you're doing something that involves a competitor to one of those sponsors, this is the way it's going to work. I like you. I think it misses the point. I think it takes a lot of the sporting, naivete out of it. But that's the point. You can't be naive about anything with respect to the Olympics. If there's one thing they're dead serious about, because they're obviously not dead serious about doping, if there's one thing they're serious about, it is protecting sponsors.
Because they don't have enough money already. I mean, who knew that Prada was so into snowboarding? And then, the flying tomato, Shaun White himself, he has a snowboard case that's Louis Vuitton. I didn't know that it was such a luxurious. I thought skiing was the more luxurious pastime, right, than snowboarding, just from my travels and my adventures up onto the mountains. But look at here, snowboarding just as luxurious. And I feel for her, but congratulations on earning that silver medal and for sticking up for yourself and for your sponsor and feeling like that wasn't going to be a safe move for you. And hopefully Prada will show her some love, maybe with some more Prada products. I don't know. Or maybe they'll send her a board without the Prada name on it just for funsies, but yet still with their signature designs. Coming up now, we've got James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm assuming he's back in Texas after his time in LA, but who knows? Maybe he's still partying it up with the Rams. Maybe he's also carrying around a bottle of 1942. Also want to get his take on, of course, the Super Bowl halftime show, as well as the game, what it was like at the NFL honors ceremony as the new Hall of Famers were announced, and everything else that he did while he was out in LA. You are listening to the Chris Duel Show. Coach A. Paul Alexander sitting in for Chris for the next couple of days as he's taking time off for the NBA All-Star Weekend. And Jeremy Kolak holding it down with some amazing tunes this morning. We'll keep it right here. Come back with us. It's the Chris Duel Show.
Down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring
This is the Chris Duel Show.
And that was my favorite. And of course, you have Kate Jewelers there that does the huge rings and for us, and the Hager. It was my favorite event by a long shot. Not only is it really intimate, I did not know this. They bring them up there. They bring Tony Baselli and all those guys, and Coach Vermeil and BY and everybody else up there, and they talk about them. And they don't know they're going to do this. They said, "We want you to come up here and talk." And these guys. And then Steve Hutchison, Chris Carter made a surprise entrance and talks about what to expect. And it was my favorite by a long shot. You had to keep the tears back because these guys. Big Richard Seymour starts crying. Dick Vermeil, as he always says, always cries. And that was my favorite event. I've never been to it all these years. So it was great. And then obviously I get invited to a lot of stuff. Obviously I'm still on oxygen, so I didn't go to everybody said, "Hey, did you go to Gronk's thing or Jerry Rice?" That started at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So invited, didn't make that. But I went to a lot of events and I was just glad. And I think we've talked about this with Coach and you. Best playoffs I've seen in modern history, tied in with a close Super Bowl. It's just been a great overall season.
James, I so much enjoyed our last conversation, and I've been looking forward to this one. Let me just say, first of all, that you guys at the Hall of Fame got it right. You nailed it. What was the most memorable moment for you?
I think just talking to Coach Vermeil and getting information from him and everything else. And also, there's a guy that has been with the Hall of Fame for 43 years. Mr. Horrigan, retired. We brought him back. Probably he's even written a book, and Gil Brandt says he's the most knowledgeable guy ever in things. And I spent some one-on-one time with him for about 40 minutes, asking him questions. And the question I asked him, Coach, if you had to pick number one overall draft, who do you pick? And he said, Don Hudson.
Wow.
Wow. And I thought, people take Jim Brown and, Jerry Rice, all that stuff. And just talking to him, and he's very humble. You have to get stuff out of him. And just that intimate time with guys that know so much about the Hall of Famers and everything else. But I really think, I've been very blessed that I know a lot of the Hall of Famers and them coming up and talking to me and just sharing stuff. Of course, Warren Moon's on the board with me and Anthony Munoz. But, reconnecting with those guys is probably second to the sizing ceremony. Coach, is probably my favorite thing at the Merlin Olsen luncheon where they all come, all the Gold Jackets, all the Hall of Famers, and hanging out with them backstage. I mean, I'm just, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm just sitting there like, hi. And that's probably, those are my two favorite events.
James, I was just so happy for the families of Cliff Branch and Sam Mills. What was that like?
Yeah, their wives, Cliff's sister came up and talked, and Sam Mills, and at that very intimate event, and they bring them up and tell them to talk, and there wasn't a dry eye in the thing, and how much it means to them, and to their family, and to their kids and grandkids. And of course, Cliff, as you know, has been out for a long time, and I don't know, it was just kind of good. It's also good for Sam. He played with Ricky Jackson, who's in the Hall of Fame at the Saints under Mr. Vince's ownership, and I don't know, it's to have them come up there, their spouses, and all the spouses afterwards hugged. To me, that was amazing. What the effect. I think what over Paul, Coach, is that. What really got me, and I'm not surprised by it after all these years, and I'm glad I'm not jaded by it, is how much this means to these guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you see, these very macho Richard Seymour, Tony Bissell guys go up there and they could barely stand, and their wives, start bawling, and then you have these people, like you say, Cliff Branch's sister and Sam Mills' wife go up there. I don't know. It's a really special time. There's 350 something people in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, you take out the contributors, it's just over 300 people in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I just like it, as Dick Vermeil already knows, it's a team for life. And I'm so happy for the widows too, because obviously they would want, and the family would want them there, but they definitely, know that they have not only a team for life, but they have a place to come back, as they all do. The widows do to this day, come back to Canton.
Talking Super Bowl and Hall of Fame football with member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, James Allen, who was out in LA all last week. Now, James, Super Bowl Sunday, it's an all-day affair. I mean, there's coverage from the moment you wake up. Maybe you turn it over to the Puppy Bowl, and between some commercial breaks, maybe you don't. Maybe you keep it on the NFL Super Bowl coverage the entire day leading up to the game. Then there's the game itself. I myself was at home with a small gathering of people. I ate everything that could or possibly be stuffed with cream cheese. It was so delicious. There are also some beverages. We enjoyed the game, the commercials, the halftime. You were out there in LA, so take us through your Super Bowl Sunday.
I had to, at late night, I had to get up and do some free things with the Hall NFL, and then they shipped us over in an NFL bus. There's a NFL VIP party. That's really, they're not, they have an NFC, an AFC private party, like, obviously Steve Young and of course, Andrew, all these Hall of Famers go to their different things behind the scenes, and that's really cool. And that's, and you have, of course, you had, for the younger crowd, they had chain smokers there and private concert and everything else. And it's a very intimate environment. You get to see a lot of people beyond just sponsors and people you don't recognize that are, billionaires that are just, everybody's just kind of laid back. And that is really cool. We do that for several hours. And then they escort you, at your leisure over to the seats, which is right next to the stadium. And by the way, that stadium is amazing. So really spent about 2 or 3 hours at a pre-Super Bowl get together at the stadium. And then, you do the Super Bowl, invited to some post-Super Bowl deals, but, given my health right now and not battling two things, I made it did some stuff with the NFL stuff behind the scenes, and then I headed back to my hotel. So later that night.
James, tell us everything we need to know about the life and career of Art McNally, such a contributor to the game. I am fascinated by his life.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm glad he's alive. He didn't make the trip. His son and daughter spoke for him because he's 90, whatever, 3 years old. He plans on being there in Canton. I could go on and on about him. The only referee, of course, to get in the Hall of Fame. But, he's the one that talked about instant replay. Nobody ever thought about that. He instigated a lot of things to make the game more entertaining. Obviously, the commissioners, Tagliabue and Roselle, along with our current commissioner, listen to him over everything else. I could go a list about 10 things that he innovated, not only make the rules more modern, which referees, and suggestions to the rules committee to make the game speed up and better for the audience, and at the same time better for refereeing so they can get it right. And of course, I could give you like a bunch of them. They listed them all at this private deal, but obviously video instant replay and be able to review touchdowns, is germane and has saved a lot of games. And I'm really excited for him. He's beyond excited. The family doesn't know what to say. They're very humble, but most people don't know who he is, and I'm glad they're kind of putting him on the forefront because the guys with the so-called zebra outfits, he was taking it beyond the game and trying to make the game better for the refs, but also for the fans.
James, you were at the Super Bowl. We are Facebook friends, so I saw plenty of what I felt like was behind the scenes, the real action of everything from where you were sitting, from people you ran into, taking pictures. And then one fun video that was actually of the halftime show. I don't know if you noticed that you took the video when 50 Cent was actually getting in position to hang upside down for the beginning of his performance during the halftime show. Your thoughts on how that halftime show went? How did it sound? There were reports that it was actually mostly made for TV as they usually are, but that you really couldn't actually hear within the stadium the music that was going on. So just your thoughts on that whole performance and if you enjoyed it.
I did. It represents LA. Obviously the stadium's in Inglewood. And it was a good representation of, hip hop. Obviously East Coast, West Coast, but, they did a lot out there and I thought it sounded great. I really enjoyed it. And I thought they did it great. And as Dr. Dre said later, who's really kind of the head guy of all that stuff, the NFL only asked them to do a couple things and let it free go. So I thought, of course, the staging is amazing and all the fan interaction, all the lights, everything else. It was a great show. I know people are they always, we've gotten to the point of comparing everything. Is it better than Prince or better than, this and that? For me, it was a great entertainment show. The artists did great. It sounded great. The staging was great. It represents, each town kind of has the thing they want to follow. I thought I actually kind of enjoyed it.
Coach Paul A. Alexander joining me and talking with James Allen on all things Super Bowl and the NFL. We're going to pause for a quick moment because it is 8:20 on the Chris Duel Show. We've got another shot at a chance for you to put $1,000 in your hand with another keyword. Here it is.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Fun. That's fun. Enter it on our station website now.
Keyword fun for your 8 o'clock hour. Take that to ticket760.com or am1300thezone.com for your shot at $1,000 in your hand. Coach A, I'll let you take the next question here with James Allen.
James, I was so happy for Tony Boselli and maybe a little bit pleasantly surprised, not that he wasn't one of the great tackles of all time, but he played in relatively few games. And, he played pretty much in obscurity in Jacksonville, although they did make it to a conference championship game and was so highly regarded. And I remember when the Texans were coming into existence and courting him, I was just really happy for him. Not just a great technician, but a really good teammate.
Yeah, he's very open about that. When you talk to the other Hall of Famers and even BY, Bryant Young, and Richard Seymour were saying, I mean, that guy was a force. And it's kind of like, I know it's an overused term, man amongst boys, to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he just was one of those guys that was just far and a better every year than everyone else. And you're right, Paul, very obscure, first one from the team to be on the Hall of Fame, and very obscure thing. And I'm glad that the committee and everything else is looking at things and not, going with the hype and the winning his team. So I was excited for that. Coach, I forgot something, and I'm still kind of catching up with sleep. One of the favorite things I would actually put it as tied for our number 2 was the Walter Payton Man of the Year has become a symbolism. It's considered the most prized award. I don't know if people know this. If you win that, that's on your jersey for life.
Wow.
And because that's how hard it is. And they had all the nominees up there. So they edify them, even though they know they didn't win. But Andrew Whitworth from the Rams, the tackle, and holy cow, what he does. And he doesn't do it for anything. And what his speech, was, they replayed it a couple times. I just want to say, obviously Jarrett Payton and his sister are great ambassadors for their father, but Andrew Whitworth, and then have all the nominees there to edify the class that they do. Coach, I did want to mention Andrew Whitworth. That was an amazing speech and amazing edification of people beyond the stripes, beyond the field, what they do that they don't even get called attention to. They're not doing it for commercials.
Yeah.
Andrew Whitworth's just a big guy. He's not going to get that thing. So that was another thing, Coach, I didn't mention.
That was so beautiful and so inspiring, and something that really moved me. Did you see how proud his 2 young sons were of their father? I mean, that just got me. And then for him to go out in the Super Bowl at the age of 40 and play the way he did, I was listening to some NFL offensive line coaches on the radio yesterday, and they said they'd broken down the tape and that he graded out higher than any other offensive lineman in that game on either side.
I haven't heard that. That's why I like talking to you, Coach, but I'm not surprised. It's just like, what do you say, right? I mean, I know everyone's talking about, it's a quarterback for the Rams. Matt Stafford is the Hall of Famer. And, I kind of like, let them finish their career, but I get it. It's instant gratification isn't soon enough, right? In today's world. But, when you have guys like him, people don't talk about Von Miller or Donaldson, about the Hall of Fame, the guys down there. But for him to do that, I mean, beyond the Hall of Fame, he's a Hall of Fame dad and he's a Hall of Fame man. So in my book.
Well, James, the Rams victorious this year. They're hoping to, as I said yesterday, run it back and get another one next year. They've got a lot of free agents, though, that they need to figure out what they're going to do with. And even if Odell Beckham Jr., who tore his ACL during that Super Bowl, will be available to them, the early favorites to win it all next year are the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, both at plus 750. How do you like the Rams' odds if they were to keep that same roster in place for next season?
Well, I'm not going to throw one of the commissioner's right or left-hand men that I got the chance. He's legendary to ride on the bus with and talking about this. But I brought this up, and he said, it's a great analogy. It reminds me, and Coach will know the year, when the Florida Marlins, when Wayne Huizenga, basically went all in like Stan Kroenke did for the Rams, the owner. They wanted to win this year, and they went all in. And it's not a building process, so it's going to be tough for them, kind of like the Marlins did in baseball, to follow up with that and who they can keep and who they can't keep with all the stuff they did. So it's curious what they're going to do. And there's a lot of other teams out there, the Cardinals and stuff like that, are in the hunt. Of course, they would like to do it. It's in Phoenix next year, Glendale, the Super Bowl. And, there's a lot of teams everybody's talking about for next year. Even the 49ers, given some things they need to change. And there's a lot of stuff going out there. But, yeah, for the Rams to repeat, you got a lot of free agents, a lot of draft picks you let go to do this, which is great. But I'm not sure if that's going to carry over too much longer.
It'll be interesting to see if other teams do follow that lead. And as we were talking about earlier, in terms of NFL teams who have chosen to go all in, This really is the first time it's worked. So that's one in a row.
That's a great point, Coach. I agree with you 100%. This is I don't think it's a formula for success, but Coach, you've been doing this a long time, and not being disingenuous to Shannon, but just doing it. Y'all have seen as sports things that it's a very trend, thing. The Spurs got the big three, then everybody went out and got the big three, and they didn't do it for that reason. That's just Coach Pop keeping guys together. So you're right, Coach. Maybe it's a very herd mentality in this game, and owners want to win now. So we'll see what happens.
We love talking football with James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Welcome back to Texas after your Super Bowl stint, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, I want to thank. Also, just side note, and I'll let you go real quick. Is that out there they always ask me Texas and football, and I always tell them the analogy is in Texas, the Bible Belt, it's God Almighty, football, the Alamo, and George Strait, and then somebody has heard me say that and sent me George Strait's HEB commercial, which I played for everybody out there. And great job, HEB, by the way, on the commercial on that. And so thank you for that. Thanks you to my mom and dad who are listening. They're trying to heal. Thank you both for giving me this format on behalf of myself and the Hall of Fame, just to put some light on this. And I appreciate you guys so much.
James, always love talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
James Alexander, I'm just mixing the both of you guys up because I'm so used to having you separate. Coach A, James Allen of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's the A's. That's what it is. Coming up next, we'll have Andy Everett, voice of the UTSA Roadrunners, and also golf enthusiast, host of the golf show on Ticket 760. UTSA has got 5 games left in their regular season. They've got a game tonight, and lots of golf action underway so far this season, and tournaments soon to be in Texas, including the Valero Open in San Antonio and the Dell Match Play here in Austin. We'll get Andy's thoughts on Tiger Woods, what he had to say yesterday, as well as so much more when we come back. It is the Chris Duel Show.
Hey, this is Jake from State Farm. Since I'm all about being a good neighbor, I want to let you know that some other car insurance companies are increasing their rates in your state. So it's a good time to check your latest bill. But don't worry, if your bill's gone up and your budget's busted, switch to State Farm for surprisingly great rates. Problem solved. For surprisingly great rates, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or visit statefarm.com for a quote today.
Back to the
Chris Duel Show, final segment on a Thursday with Coach A, who will be sitting in with me again tomorrow in a couple days to kick off next week. Jeremy Collock playing the tunes as the sound stylist. And at this time on Thursdays, we always enjoy talking to this man, the voice of the UTSA Roadrunners. You can hear him tonight on Ticket 760. Tip is at 7 for UTSA men's basketball. They are taking on Southern Mississippi. There's only 5 games left in the regular season for this program. It hasn't fared all that well thus far, but who knows? Maybe they'll string together some wins down the final stretch. Andy, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, sir. Thanks for joining us. So let's start right there, and then we'll get into some NFL as well as PGA. This UTSA men's basketball team with 5 games left in the season. What does this team need to work on, and how are the coaches keeping these players and these kids engaged to come out and continue to play their hearts out each night? Because it's got to be hard when you just aren't seeing those wins come along.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with UTSA, and we've talked about this all year long, is shooting. They're one of the worst shooting basketball teams in the nation. They do everything else well. They rebound well, they assist well, they defend well. All the other numbers are comparable to any team that's probably got 17 or 18 wins at this point. But the name of the game is scoring, and you have to be able to score, and you have to be able to shoot better than the mid-30s with your shooting percentage for the year. And they just haven't been able to do that. I think the good thing, though, is that every one of these players tends to like each other, and they play for each other. And I think, you look at their practices, you look at their shoot-arounds, they're all good. The frustrating part comes when it's game time and the ball doesn't go in. And I know that anybody that's competitive, that's always been around a winning program before, really struggles with that. But I think everybody, coaches and players, have done a great job staying together and not pointing fingers and not blaming somebody else, but collectively trying to figure out a way to get in the win column.
Andy, I think we'd be crazy if we didn't avail ourselves of the chance to ask you about Tiger Woods. I mean, you're practically his biographer, and I love your just vault of knowledge about this. The statement that he makes that he's going to play on the PGA Tour again, what was your reaction? Do you think it's realistic, and how do you think he'll do?
Yes, I do think he'll play on the PGA Tour. I think he'll play about 8 to 9 events a year at the most. I think he'll play the majors unless he doesn't qualify for one. But other than the U.S. Open, I think he's got a lifetime exemption into the rest of them. I think and I don't think he'll play this year. Probably until I'm sure he wants to play the Masters, but he talks about trying to walk on the golf course that he hasn't really done yet. And the Masters is one of the most difficult walks. It's very undulating, up and down, very hilly. So I don't know that we'll see Tiger play until maybe May or even June. I'm really hoping we see him play at St. Andrews in the Open Championship in July, which he says is his favorite golf course. I have no doubt that he will play. I have no doubt that he will actually win another event at some point. I just think the competitive nature of people like Tiger and other athletes of his ilk have always been, I'm going to prove you wrong no matter what. And I think when he's 60 years old, he's still going to try to go out and compete. It may not be on the PGA Tour. Maybe it's on the PGA Tour Champions. Who knows? But I don't think you ever lose that competitive spirit. And now Tiger's goal is to prove everybody that I can come back from a leg that was just a few hours away from being amputated, and now it's being rehabbed. So I hope he makes it, and I'm sure he's doing everything he can to get back as quickly as he can. But as he said yesterday, it's not on my timetable. I just have to go through the process until I'm ready to go.
Andy, last weekend, the PGA was at the Phoenix Open, and on 2 separate days, we had an ace at hole number 16. And on both days, fans went absolutely nuts. They were throwing beer in the air. They were throwing cans and all sorts of things onto the tee box, which then took time away from other players getting to come up to that tee box. They had to clean it up. It took a little bit of time. Golf purists, not so happy about it because they felt like that's a disruption of the game. Why would you do that? Golf is played a certain way. But on the other hand, people are saying, look how many people are now tuning into this. Look how many people are talking about it. It's good to show that there is excitement going on in golf. It's not all just soft claps and whispering. Your thoughts on the actions that took place at the Phoenix Open, and if the PGA might consider selling, I don't know if they can sell less beer, putting up a barrier. I mean, what can they do to really stop people from throwing beer cans when there's a hole in one?
Well, I don't know that they can unless they're going to actually eject people for doing it, and then you'd have to throw a lot of people out. And listen, my only concern about it is from a safety issue, because not only do you have other fans in the stands, and not everybody's got a good aim at to where they're throwing stuff, but you've got officials, you've got media. Apparently, Amanda Balionis got soaked with beer on Sam Ryder's hole-in-one because she was right underneath one of the grandstands where a lot of it was coming. I don't have a problem with it once a year at the Phoenix Open and the celebration that goes on and the noise that goes on. I'm fine with that once a year. And I think that's what makes that particular event special. And there are a lot of players that hate it and they don't go and play. And there are a lot of players that love it and they're going to show up every year. And it's also always on Super Bowl weekend. So you finish the golf and then you go watch the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, this year the playoff kind of encroached a little bit on the first couple of plays of the football game. I don't have an issue with it except from the safety part of a flying aluminum beer can hitting somebody in the head might cause some damage. But other than that, as far as it being a disruption to the players, they know it's coming when it's coming, and they either can deal with it or choose not to play.
Andy, I think that's just an absolutely dead-on great take. You wouldn't want that week after week, but it's a unique event for a variety of reasons, including it being Super Bowl week. It has developed that reputation as a party stop. And clue me on this, because I saw it on Saturday. I did not see it on Sunday because as much as I like golf, there was a football game going on. So I saw it on Saturday, and the whole thing almost looked a little choreographed to me, and I was not offended. It was almost like they'd said, hey, if there's a hole in one here, let the suds fly. Was there anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the tradition that's happened. I mean, if you go back to 1997 when Tiger made a hole in one there, 98 maybe when Tiger, or 97 or 98, whenever Tiger made his hole in one, there wasn't the grandstands then. They hadn't built it up. It was only I would seat about 15,000 instead of about 45,000, I guess is what it seats now. But people were throwing papers and beer cans and Cokes and all kinds of stuff out on the tee, and it's just what that event has become. You normally when you watch a PGA Tour event or go to one and somebody gets ready to putt, there's dead silence. You could hear a pin drop. Well, there's anything but that from the day on Monday when they start opening the gates to let people watch the practice rounds. It's a constant buzz, but it is constant. And I don't think golfers even care about noise as long as it's constant. It's when, somebody honks a horn in your backswing or yells out, mashed potatoes or something like that when you're getting ready to hit. That's the things that distract and bother golfers. It's not the noise that goes on there. And it's once a week. And as I said, if you're a player that doesn't like it, then don't go. Then take the weekend off, watch the game, and go to Pebble Beach the next week or the week before. So, or to LA. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Finally, Andy, you picked the Rams to win over the weekend at the Super Bowl. Your score prediction, 31-27. You were close, and that game was definitely a close matchup with that line being 4.5, and the difference in the game being 3 points. Did you think, how well did the Rams play in your eyes, and do you think we'll see either of these two teams back in the near future?
I think it's so hard to repeat when you win, and especially if Aaron Donald decides to retire, and who knows what the makeup of your team's going to be. At some point, everybody starts to look at themselves individually, and somebody may want more money. I'm happy for Matt Stafford because I've thought since he came into the league that Matt Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. And yet he plays on one of the worst franchises in all of football in the Detroit Lions, or for that matter, one of the worst franchises in all of sports. They're terribly managed. They're terribly run. They've gone through 500 head coaches since he's been there. They don't have a direction. And I really have a problem with teams that tell their fan base and tell their season ticket holders, we're going to do it this year. We're really got a plan to win. and yet all of their actions speak 100% in the opposite direction. And other than a few guys that he's had on his team, he's never had a team that was ever going to get him very far, maybe a cup of coffee in the playoffs. So I'm really glad that Matt Stafford won. And I think Joe Burrow is going to be around for a long time. And I think the Bengals are going to be a contender as long as he's their quarterback and stays healthy. Whether they get back to the game or not is another story, because it's always a long road. But I think you got a great story in Stafford finally winning one on a good team, and the next great star in the NFL.
Really quick here, Andy, because you did mention season ticket holders. Wanted to mention that on Monday, UTSA football season tickets go on sale. They obviously had a great season last year. What is your pitch to get those involved in this program and to look to get season tickets for this next season?
Well, buy tickets now and support the program. This was a great season. It's going to be a great season next year. I would say this, however, if you are a fan who travels to road games, I would not start booking hotel reservations yet, because Southern Miss and Old Dominion and Marshall have said, we're leading the league. And Conference USA said, no, you're not. We're going to sue you. So this is going to get tied up in litigation for a few months. But at the end of the day, there's a better than good chance that those three teams are going to be allowed to leave, which is going to change the way that schedule is created. So the tickets that you buy are going to say game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4, 5, 6. Because there's going to be 6 home games most likely. But nonetheless, if you're one that travels to Middle Tennessee to go spend the weekend in Nashville, or you want to go wherever else UTSA goes, that schedule may change. And I would be very surprised if it doesn't change between now and when we actually get the season underway.
Andy Everett, voice of the UTSA Roadrunners. He is on the call tonight for UTSA men's basketball versus Southern Miss. Thanks so much, Andy, and have a great call. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you both. See you soon.
Enjoyed it, Andy. Thank you.
That one went by quick, Coach. I don't know about you, but that was a fast Thursday show for me. But they always go fast when there is plenty to talk about. I'm sure there will be more. I'm seeing news now. We discussed earlier the Matthew Stafford fun times he had at the parade yesterday, and we mentioned that at one point there was a photographer that fell off the stage, and he said, "Oh my gosh," and quickly drank a sip of water and turned around, walked the other way. We're getting news now that that photographer's name is Kelly. There's now a GoFundMe up for her because she actually fractured her spine, sir, in that fall she took yesterday. No. She is a photographer. Oh, no. She did take part in other Super Bowl celebrations as well, the Super Bowl itself. So we hope that she has a speedy recovery. We can get into that more tomorrow as details unfold. Coach, thank you so much for stepping in once again to join me. I know this is just day one, but I always have a great time when you're here.
Well, you know what they say about when you're having fun. That's why this went by so quickly, and I can't wait for tomorrow. Thank you. Always a pleasure working with you. And that goes for Jeremy.
Now, tomorrow's Friday, and it's always football season here on the Chris Duel Show, but it's going to be a different football Friday than what we've been used to for what feels like for so long now. But we'll have some fun with it. So I'm sure more stories will come about, and we'll get into the NBA All-Star Weekend and maybe pick some winners for all of those special competitions and what's going to be going on there. Chris Duel will be back mid next week. He is taking off the All-Star Weekend himself, going on a little much-deserved vacation. But Coach A and I will be back with you tomorrow. Jeremy, are you with us tomorrow?
See, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me because I don't know. I was told earlier in the week. Yeah, I was told, I was asked if I could be ready in case I was needed for Friday. And I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, all right, we'll let you know. And now it's Thursday. I'll ask
leaving
someone.
You hanging. All right.
Somebody will be here.
Well,
somebody will be in this chair.
Coach A, myself, and a mysterious +1. We'll see who it is at 6:00 tomorrow morning. Tune in to find out. Isn't that a great tease? Thanks so much for listening. As always, you can find the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you hit up that Chris Duel Show blog page. We've got fun stories for you over there throughout the day. We'll be doing this again tomorrow on Football Friday for Coach A, Jeremy, myself, Shannon Salty Sweeney. Thanks so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye-bye.